The last thing I remember before my world shattered was the warm glow of taillights ahead and the sound of my cousin Jake laughing about something stupid from our family barbecue. Then came the screaming headlights cutting through the darkness, the bone-crushing impact of metal against metal, and glass exploding everywhere like deadly confetti. My 19-year-old body flew against the steering wheel as my Honda Civic crumpled around me like a tin can. The other driver had run the red light at 60 miles per hour. 3 days later, I opened my eyes to sterile white walls and the steady beeping of machines. My head felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, and every breath sent sharp pain shooting through my chest. A nurse with kind eyes and graying hair was checking my IV drip. "Welcome back to the world, honey," she said softly. "I'm Sarah. You've been unconscious for 3 days." I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Sarah held a cup of ice chips to my lips, and the cold relief was incredible. "What happened?" I finally managed to croak. "Car accident on Highway 36. You were driving home from a family gathering when another vehicle ran a red light and hit you head-on." Her expression grew more serious. "You had severe internal bleeding, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and your left leg was completely shattered. We almost lost you twice on the operating table." The memories came flooding back. The barbecue at my cousin's house in suburban Denver. Mom and my sister Ashley had left early to drive to some expensive spa in Aspen for a weekend girls' trip. I'd stayed to help clean up and spend time with my cousins I rarely got to see. "Where's my mom?" "Diana Rodriguez. She must be worried sick." Sarah's face changed, and she glanced toward the door before pulling a chair closer to my bed. "Chet, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear." My heart started pounding, making the monitors beep faster. "When you arrived, you needed emergency surgery immediately. The internal bleeding was life-threatening. We called your mother for consent, as you're still a minor until next month." "What did she say?" Sarah took a deep breath. She said, and I quote, "If it dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork. I'm at a spa." Then she hung up. The words hit me harder than the car crash. My own mother had basically told the hospital to let me die rather than interrupt her vacation. I stared at the ceiling, trying to process this information. "But you obviously had the surgery," I said weakly. "Yes, because someone else stepped in. Your legal status has changed, Chet. Look at these papers." She handed me a clipboard with official-looking documents. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "New legal guardian, Robert Hayes." "I don't understand. Who's Robert Hayes?" "Your uncle. Your mother's older brother. He works part-time security here at the hospital and was on duty when the ambulance brought you in. He recognized your last name and asked to see your file." Just then, a tall man with weathered hands and kind brown eyes appeared in the doorway. He was wearing a maintenance worker's uniform and looked to be in his 40s, with graying hair and the build of someone who worked with his hands for a living. "Chet?" His voice was gentle but strong. "I'm Robert, your uncle." I studied his face, searching for any recognition. There was something familiar about his eyes, but I couldn't place where I'd seen him before. "I don't remember you," I admitted. "You wouldn't. Diana cut me out of your life when you were about 10 years old. We used to spend every Sunday together working on my truck in the garage. You loved helping me with the tools." A distant memory flickered. Sunday afternoons in a garage that smelled like motor oil and sawdust. Large hands guiding my small ones as we fixed something together. The memory was so faint I wasn't sure if it was real or imagined. "Why did Mom cut you out?" Robert's jaw tightened. "We had disagreements about how she was raising you and Ashley. I tried to stay in touch, but she moved 3 times without giving me the new address. Changed phone numbers. Made it impossible for me to reach you." Sarah stood up. "I'll let you two talk. Chet, you're going to be here for at least another week while your leg heals. The doctors want to make sure there's no brain swelling from the concussion." After she left, Robert pulled the chair closer. "Chet, there are things you need to know about your family. Things Diana never told you." "Like what?" "Like the fact that your grandparents left you a substantial inheritance when they died 5 years ago. Diana was supposed to hold it in trust until you turned 21. I'd never heard anything about an inheritance. Mom always complained about money being tight, about struggling to pay bills. How much money? Originally, about $80,000. Your grandfather sold his construction business, and your grandmother had life insurance. Where is it now? Robert's expression darkened. That's what we need to talk about. Diana's been spending it. All of it. The revelation hit me like another car crash. My mother hadn't just abandoned me in the hospital. She'd been stealing from me for years. How do you know all this? Because I've been investigating. I hired a private detective 6 months ago when I started suspecting something was wrong. I've been trying to find a way to contact you and warn you, but Diana blocked every attempt. He pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Bank statements, receipts, credit card bills. She's been living off your inheritance, telling people it's her money from your father's life insurance. My father had died when I was 12. I'd always assumed Mom was managing his life insurance money carefully. The spa trip she's on right now? $8,000. Charged to the account that should have your inheritance in it. I felt sick, and not just from the concussion. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care? Robert was quiet for a long moment. Because you're my nephew. Because families should protect each other, not prey on each other. And because Diana is planning something that goes way beyond just stealing your money. What do you mean? I'll explain everything tomorrow when you're feeling stronger. But Chet, I want you to know that you're safe now. I've filed for permanent guardianship, and I'm going to make sure she can't hurt you anymore. As Robert left that evening, I stared at the hospital ceiling and tried to make sense of everything. In one day, I'd learned that my mother was not only willing to let me die but had been stealing from me for years. At the same time, an uncle I barely remembered had appeared like a guardian angel to protect me. The machines beeped steadily in the darkness as I wondered what other secrets my family had been hiding. Over the next 2 days, Robert visited every morning and evening, slowly unveiling the truth about my family that I'd never been allowed to see. He brought more documents each time, building a case that made my stomach turn. Your grandfather, my and Diana's dad, built Hayes Construction from nothing, Robert explained on his second visit. By the time he retired, he had 23 employees and contracts all over Colorado. He was proud of what he'd built. I barely remember him. Diana made sure of that. She told him you and Ashley were too busy with school activities to visit. Truth is, she didn't want you around him because he was starting to ask questions about the money he'd already given her. Robert opened another folder. Before he died, your grandfather gave Diana $50,000 to help with your college fund. This was separate from the inheritance. Look at these bank statements. The records showed the $50,000 being deposited and then immediately withdrawn in chunks. $5,000 for a vacation to Hawaii, $3,000 for jewelry, $8,000 for a new car down payment. None of it went toward college savings. She spent his gift money on herself, while telling him it was safely invested for your education. What about my grandmother? Your grandmother suspected what Diana was doing. She called me 2 weeks before she died and said she was worried about you and Ashley's future. She wanted to make sure the inheritance went directly to you when you turned 21, not through Diana. Robert pulled out a handwritten letter in shaky elderly handwriting. This is from your grandmother to me. She wrote it a month before she passed away. I read the letter with growing amazement. My grandmother had suspected Diana was mismanaging money and had specifically requested that Robert watch over my inheritance. She'd even given Robert power of attorney to investigate if anything seemed wrong. Diana told me Grandma died suddenly and didn't leave any instructions, I said. Diana lied. Your grandmother spent weeks making sure her will was ironclad. She left specific instructions that if Diana misused your inheritance, Robert Hayes should step in as your guardian. But why didn't you act sooner? Robert's face reddened with anger, not at me but at the situation. Because Diana convinced the family that I was dangerous. She told everyone I was involved with drugs, that I'd been in prison, that I was trying to steal from the family. Were any of those things true? Not one word. I've worked construction my whole life, never been arrested, own my house outright, and have money in the bank. But Diana spread these stories at every family gathering, every phone call, every chance she got. He showed me character reference letters from his employer, bank statements showing steady savings, and even a clean background check he'd paid for himself. She poisoned the whole family against me. Your cousins, your aunts and uncles, they all believed I was some kind of criminal trying to get my hands on inheritance money. I thought back to family gatherings over the years. Robert had never been there. When I'd asked about him as a child, Mom had always given vague answers about him being busy or having problems. She wanted me isolated so no one would question her story about managing your money responsibly. How much is left? Robert's expression grew grim. About $18,000. Out of $80,000, the room spun a little. In 5 years, my mother had stolen over $60,000 from my inheritance. Money my grandparents had worked their whole lives to save for my future. The spa trip she's on right now is costing $8,000 over 4 days. Massage treatments, luxury accommodations, shopping, all paid for with money your grandfather intended for your college education. What about Ashley? Doesn't she have inheritance money too? Yes, and Diana's been more careful with hers. Ashley's account still has about $75,000 untouched. Why mine and not hers? Robert hesitated. Because Ashley knows what Diana's been doing, and she's been helping cover it up. That revelation felt like another punch to the gut. Not only had my mother been stealing from me, but my sister had been complicit. How do you know that? Phone records. Diana calls Ashley twice a week to coordinate their stories about where money is going. Ashley has been helping create fake invoices for your educational expenses and medical costs to justify the withdrawals. He showed me printed phone records with highlighted calls between Diana and Ashley, sometimes lasting an hour or more, always happening right before or after large withdrawals from my account. Ashley even helped research private boarding schools that Diana never intended to send you to, just so she could show bank statements that looked like legitimate educational planning. I felt completely betrayed. The two people who should have protected me most had been systematically robbing me while making me feel grateful for their care. There's more, Chet. The private investigator found something else. What? Diana has been meeting with a lawyer about having you declared mentally incompetent. What does that mean? It means she's been planning to have a judge rule that you can't manage your own affairs due to mental disability. If she succeeded, she would gain permanent control over any money you inherited, any insurance money, even your Social Security benefits if you became disabled. The hospital room suddenly felt very cold. But I'm not mentally disabled. Of course you're not. But Diana has been building a fake case, false medical records, forged psychological evaluations, made up school reports about learning disabilities. He showed me photocopied documents with my name on them, claiming I had developmental delays and couldn't handle basic life skills. The reports were dated from months before my accident. She's been planning this for almost a year. The goal was to get legal control over your entire life the moment you turned 21. Why? Because that's when you legally gain access to your inheritance. She needed to make sure that never happened. I stared at the forged documents with my name on them, describing a version of me that didn't exist. According to these fake reports, I had the mental capacity of a 12-year-old and needed constant supervision. How could she fake medical records? Money. Diana found doctors who were willing to sign evaluations they never actually conducted. The private investigator tracked down 2 of them. One already has complaints filed against him with the state medical board. So when Mom refused to sign the surgery consent, she was hoping you'd die. It would solve all her problems. No more inheritance to pay back. No risk of you discovering the theft. And she'd get any insurance money from your death. The words hung in the air like poison. My own mother had been hoping the car accident would kill me. But you stopped her. Your grandmother's will gave me the legal right to step in if Diana proved unfit. The moment she refused life-saving medical care for her own child, she proved she was unfit. Robert reached over and squeezed my shoulder gently. You're safe now, Chet. I'm not going to let her hurt you anymore. But you need to know that she's going to fight back hard when she finds out about the guardianship change. What do you mean? Diana's not going to give up without a war. And when she gets back from her spa vacation and discovers she's lost control, she's going to do everything in her power to get it back. As visiting hours ended that evening, I lay in the hospital bed, thinking about how completely my understanding of my family had changed in just 3 days. The accident that nearly killed me had actually saved me from a much worse fate. But as Robert had warned, the real battle was just beginning. When Robert arrived the next morning, he looked like he hadn't slept. He was carrying a larger folder and had dark circles under his eyes. "I've been up all night going through the rest of the investigative files," he said. "What I found is worse than I thought." He sat down heavily in the visitor's chair and opened the folder with grim determination. "Diana's plan to have you declared incompetent was just phase 1. Phase 1 of what? Phase 1 of having you permanently institutionalized." The words hit me like ice water. "What are you talking about?" Robert spread out a series of documents across my bed table. The private investigator found Diana's written correspondence with a residential facility called Pine Ridge Care Center. It's about 3 hours north of Denver, near Fort Collins. He handed me a letter with Diana's signature at the bottom. She was negotiating rates for long-term residential care for a mentally disabled adult child. Look at the date. The letter was dated 6 weeks before my car accident. My mother had been planning to have me institutionalized while I was still healthy and living at home. The monthly cost was $4,500, paid for by the resident's inheritance and Social Security disability benefits. But I'm not disabled. Any doctor would see that immediately. Not if you had a severe head injury from a car accident that left you with permanent brain damage. The implications slowly sank in. You think she was planning the accident? No, but I think she was prepared to take advantage of any accident that happened. Look at this. He showed me an insurance policy I'd never seen before. Diana had taken out a life insurance policy on me worth $200,000, with herself as the beneficiary. The policy was dated just 3 months earlier. If you died in the accident, she'd get the insurance money and never have to pay back what she stole. If you survived but had brain damage, she'd use that to justify the incompetency ruling and the institutionalization. What about if I survived completely healthy? Then she'd proceed with the original plan. Forge enough medical evidence to convince a judge you were mentally disabled and couldn't live independently. Robert pulled out more correspondence. She was also researching legal precedents for emergency guardianship due to mental health crises. She found cases where family members were committed against their will based on fabricated psychological evaluations. I felt sick reading through Diana's meticulous planning. She'd researched every angle, every legal loophole, every way to take control of my life and money. There's more. Diana convinced several family members to write letters supporting her claim that you needed constant supervision. Which family members? Your Aunt Karen, your cousin Jake's mother. She told them you'd been having behavioral problems, skipping school, showing signs of mental instability. But that's not true. Of course it's not. But Diana provided them with fake school reports and made-up incidents to support her story. She even claimed you'd been caught stealing money from her purse. Robert showed me copies of the letters family members had written, all expressing concern about my supposed mental health issues and supporting Diana's request for guardianship. They thought they were helping protect you from yourself. How did Diana get them to write these letters? She told them you were becoming dangerous, that you'd threatened Ashley, that you were using drugs, that you'd been violent with her. All lies, but convincing enough to scare people into supporting her plan. I thought about the family barbecue just days before my accident. My Aunt Karen had been unusually quiet around me, almost nervous. My cousin Jake had seemed distant. Now I understood why. She spent months poisoning them against me before asking for their help. Exactly. By the time she asked them to write those letters, they believed you were genuinely unstable and needed to be institutionalized for everyone's safety. Robert pulled out the most disturbing document yet. It was a medical report, supposedly from a psychiatrist, claiming I had been evaluated and found to have severe antisocial personality disorder with violent tendencies. This evaluation supposedly took place 6 weeks ago. Do you remember seeing any psychiatrist? Never. I've never seen a psychiatrist in my life. The doctor who supposedly wrote this report doesn't exist. The medical license number is fake, the address is a vacant office building, and the signature doesn't match any licensed psychiatrist in Colorado. Diana had created an entirely fictional mental health history for me, complete with fake doctors and fabricated diagnoses. But why go to all this trouble? Why not just continue stealing money gradually? Because you were getting close to 21. Once you legally became an adult and gained access to your inheritance, you'd discover what she'd done. She needed permanent control before that happened. What was her timeline? Robert sorted through the documents. Based on these letters and applications, she was planning to have you committed sometime within the next 2 months. The car accident actually accelerated her timeline. How? She was prepared to claim the head injury triggered a mental health crisis that required immediate intervention. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have used your unconscious state to get emergency guardianship approved. And then? Then you would have woken up in Pine Ridge Care Center instead of this hospital, with Diana having legal control over every aspect of your life. You'd have been told you suffered brain damage that left you mentally incapacitated. The horror of that alternative reality washed over me. I would have been trapped in an institution, probably medicated to keep me compliant, with no way to prove my sanity or communicate with the outside world. How long could she have kept me there? Indefinitely. Once someone is committed as mentally incompetent, it's extremely difficult to get them released, especially when their legal guardian is the one claiming they're too dangerous to be free. Robert gathered up the documents. Diana spent almost a year creating a paper trail that would have convinced any judge you were severely mentally ill and potentially violent. If her plan had worked, no one would have questioned your commitment. What about Ashley? Did she know about the institutionalization plan? According to the phone records, yes. Ashley was supposed to testify at the competency hearing about your erratic behavior and threats of violence. My sister, who I'd shared a room with for years, who I'd helped with homework and defended against bullies, was prepared to lie in court to have me locked away forever. They both knew that once I was committed, I'd probably never get out. That was the point. Diana would have complete control over your inheritance, your insurance money, and any disability benefits. She could keep you institutionalized for the rest of your life while spending your money on herself. Robert stood up to leave. The private investigator is still gathering evidence, but we already have enough to stop Diana's plan permanently. The question now is what she'll do when she gets back from her spa trip and discovers her scheme has been exposed. What do you think she'll do? I think she'll try to discredit everything we've found and paint me as the real threat to your safety. Diana's spent years convincing people she's a devoted mother protecting her disabled son. She's not going to give up that image without a fight. As Robert left that evening, I realized that learning about Diana's theft was just the beginning. The institutionalization plan revealed a level of calculated evil that I was still struggling to comprehend. My mother hadn't just been stealing money from me. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation and planning to steal my entire life. But now I knew the truth. And tomorrow, Robert would help me figure out how to fight back. On my 7th day in the hospital, Robert arrived looking worried. He'd received a phone call from his lawyer at 6 in the morning. Diana's back from her spa trip, he said grimly. And she's not taking the guardianship change well. What's she doing? She's filed a counter lawsuit claiming I kidnapped you and manipulated you while you were mentally compromised from the head injury. She's alleging elder abuse, financial exploitation, and false imprisonment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But you saved my life. Diana's telling a different story. According to her court filing, I took advantage of your unconscious state to steal you away from your loving family. She claims I forged the guardianship documents, and that you're too mentally impaired from the accident to understand what's happening. Robert showed me the legal papers Diana had filed. Reading her version of events was surreal. In her telling, she was a devoted mother who'd rushed back from a medical spa where she was receiving treatment for stress-related health issues. She claimed she'd told the hospital to do everything necessary to save me, and that Robert had twisted her words. She's also claiming I've been stalking your family for years, and that I have a criminal history involving fraud and elder abuse. But you showed me your background check. It was clean. I know, but Diana has somehow produced court documents allegedly showing I was convicted of financial crimes in another state. My lawyer is investigating, but they look official. The depth of Diana's preparation was staggering. She'd not only planned my institutionalization, but had also prepared to defend against any interference from Robert. There's more bad news, Robert continued. Ashley is supporting Diana's story. She's filed a statement with the court, claiming I've always been unstable, and that the family has been afraid of me for years. Ashley's betrayal felt like a fresh wound. Even after everything I'd learned about her involvement in Diana's schemes, part of me had hoped she might side with the truth. What did Ashley say exactly? Robert read from the court documents. She claims I have a history of threatening family members, that I've made inappropriate sexual comments about her, and that I once showed up at your house drunk and violent. None of that is true. I know. But Ashley sounds very convincing in her statement. She describes specific incidents that supposedly happened over the past 2 years. Dates, times, details that make her story seem credible. What kind of incidents? She claims I called the house at 3 in the morning making threatening phone calls. That I followed you and Diana to a grocery store and confronted Diana aggressively in the parking lot. That I sent inappropriate letters and gifts trying to bribe you into trusting me. Each allegation was detailed enough to seem plausible but completely fabricated. The most damaging claim is that I've been planning to kidnap you for months as part of a scheme to access your inheritance money. How does she explain you working at the hospital? She says I took the security job specifically to gain access to patient information so I could target vulnerable families. According to Ashley, I've been waiting for an opportunity to gain control over your medical care. Diana had created an entire narrative that painted Robert as a predator who'd orchestrated everything, including my accident, to gain access to my inheritance. What happens now? There's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. Diana is requesting immediate custody transfer and asking the judge to order a psychiatric evaluation to determine if you've been mentally compromised by my alleged manipulation. The irony was staggering. Diana was now claiming I needed a psychiatric evaluation to protect me from Robert's manipulation, when she'd been planning to use fake psychiatric evaluations to control me herself. Will you be able to present the evidence about her theft and the institutionalization plan? That's the problem. Diana's lawyers are claiming all that evidence was fabricated by me as part of my scheme to discredit her. They say the bank statements and documents were forged. How can they claim that? Diana has provided alternative bank statements showing different transaction histories. According to her records, your inheritance money has been carefully preserved and invested for your future. Robert showed me copies of bank statements that looked official but showed completely different information from what he'd shown me earlier. How is that possible? Either Diana has access to sophisticated document forgery, or she's convinced someone at the bank to create false records. My lawyer is working to get the original records subpoenaed, but that takes time. What about the letters to the care facility? Diana claims I created those documents to make her look bad. She says she's never heard of Pine Ridge Care Center and has never considered institutionalizing you. The hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning. Diana would appear as the concerned mother trying to rescue her injured son from a manipulative relative. Ashley would support her testimony about Robert's alleged history of threatening behavior. What about the family members who wrote letters supporting Diana's incompetency claim? That's another problem. Diana contacted them after filing her lawsuit. She told them, I'd been manipulating you, and that their letters were obtained under false pretenses. Several of them have already recanted their statements. So they no longer support the incompetency claim? Correct, but now they support Diana's claim that I'm dangerous and manipulative. She convinced them that their original letters were used against their intentions. Diana had managed to turn every piece of evidence against her into evidence against Robert. Tomorrow's hearing will essentially be Diana and Ashley's word against mine, Robert said. And they're claiming you're too mentally compromised from the head injury to provide reliable testimony. But I'm completely clear mentally. Anyone can see that. Diana's lawyers will argue that head injury victims often appear normal while suffering from impaired judgment and susceptibility to manipulation. They'll claim that your support for me is evidence of mental impairment, not proof of my innocence. That afternoon, Diana arrived at the hospital with a sheriff's escort for a court-ordered visitation. I hadn't seen my mother in over a week, and her appearance shocked me. She looked perfectly groomed and composed, not like someone who'd rushed back from vacation to help her injured son. My poor baby, she said, rushing to my bedside with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I came back as soon as I heard about the accident. Her performance was flawless. To anyone watching, she looked like a devoted mother finally reunited with her injured child. Mom, we need to talk about Robert and the inheritance money. Oh, sweetheart, that man has been filling your head with terrible lies. You have a serious head injury, and he's taking advantage of your confusion to turn you against your own family. Diana sat down and took my hand gently. I know Robert has shown you documents and bank statements, but they're all fake, honey. He created them to make you think I've been stealing from you. But I remember you refusing to sign the surgery consent forms. That's not what happened at all. I told the hospital to do everything necessary to save you, and then I rushed back from my medical treatment to be with you. But Robert had already manipulated the hospital staff into believing lies about me. Diana's version of events was so convincing that for a moment, I almost doubted my own memories. The stress of the accident has affected your judgment, baby. Head injuries can make people paranoid and suspicious, especially of the people who love them most. She pulled out a tissue and dabbed at her eyes. It breaks my heart that Robert has convinced you I don't care about you. I've devoted my entire life to taking care of you and Ashley. What about the inheritance money Grandpa left me? It's all safe in a special investment account, earning interest for your future. I have the statements right here. Diana showed me bank documents that looked completely different from what Robert had shown me. According to these records, my inheritance had grown to over $90,000. Robert probably showed you fake documents to make you think I spent your money, but why would I steal from my own son? Diana's performance was masterful. She had an answer for every accusation, and her explanations sounded reasonable and caring. I know you're confused right now because of the head injury, but I need you to trust me. Robert is not a good man, and he's using your vulnerability to manipulate you against your family. What about Ashley? Ashley is heartbroken. She's been trying to visit you, but Robert has been preventing family contact. She's afraid Robert might try to hurt her too, if she speaks out against him. When visiting time ended, Diana kissed my forehead and promised she'd have me back with my real family soon. After she left, I lay in the hospital bed feeling completely confused. Diana's explanation sounded so reasonable, and her documents looked so official. For the first time since waking up, I began to wonder if my head injury had affected my judgment more than I realized. Maybe Robert really was manipulating me. Maybe my memories of Diana's phone call to the hospital were distorted by trauma. Maybe the inheritance theft was all an elaborate lie designed to turn me against my mother. As the evening wore on, doubt crept deeper into my mind. Tomorrow's hearing would determine my future, and I was no longer sure what the truth really was. That night, I barely slept. Diana's visit had planted seeds of doubt that grew in the darkness. What if Robert really was manipulating me? What if my head injury had made me susceptible to believing elaborate lies? But in the morning, everything changed. Robert arrived with a woman I'd never seen before. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone used to dealing with difficult situations. Chet, this is Janet Coleman. She's the private investigator I hired to look into Diana's activities. Janet smiled and shook my hand firmly. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I have information that's going to clear up any confusion you might be feeling. She opened a laptop and turned it toward me. Last night, after Robert told me about Diana's visit and your doubts, I decided to show you something I've been saving for court. The laptop screen showed a video recording of a restaurant interior. This was taken 6 days ago at an upscale restaurant in Aspen. 3 days after your accident, while Diana was supposedly rushing back to be with you. The video showed Diana sitting at a table with a man in an expensive suit. They were laughing and drinking wine, clearly in no hurry. The man she's with is Marcus Webb, a lawyer who specializes in fraudulent disability claims. Diana wasn't at a medical spa. She was meeting with lawyers to finalize her plan for having you committed. Janet fast-forwarded to another section of the video. Diana and the lawyer were looking at documents spread across the table. We had a lip reader analyze this footage. Diana says, and I quote, "If the accident had just killed him, this would be so much easier. Now I have to worry about him recovering and asking questions." The words hit me like a physical blow. Diana hadn't been concerned about my recovery. She'd been disappointed that I'd survived. Janet played another recording, this one audio only. This is from 2 days later, a phone conversation between Diana and Ashley. Diana's voice came through the laptop speakers clearly. The head injury might actually work in our favor. We can claim brain damage, made him susceptible to Robert's manipulation. As long as we stick to the story that Robert's been stalking us, the judge will give me custody back. Ashley's voice responded, "What if Chet remembers what you said to the hospital? He can't prove anything. It's his word against mine, and we'll claim the head injury affected his memory. Besides, who's going to believe a confused teenager over his concerned mother?" The recording continued with Diana and Ashley coordinating their lies about Robert's alleged threats and stalking behavior. "How did you get these recordings?" I asked. "Diana doesn't know how to use technology securely," Janet explained. "Her phone automatically backs up to cloud storage that we were able to access legally through the investigation. She's been documenting her own crimes." Janet showed me more evidence. Screenshots of text messages between Diana and Ashley planning their testimony. Photos Diana had taken of forged bank documents. Even a voice memo where Diana practiced crying for the court hearing. There's more. Diana wasn't at any medical spa. She was at a luxury resort planning your institutionalization. Here are her actual credit card receipts. The receipts showed charges at expensive restaurants, bars, and shopping centers. No medical treatments, no therapeutic spa services. She also spent $800 at a store that specializes in legal document supplies. Blank letterheads, official-looking paper, even a notary stamp. She was creating the fake bank statements she showed me yesterday. Exactly. And we have security camera footage of her purchasing those supplies. Janet pulled out another folder. But here's the most important evidence. Yesterday, while Diana was visiting you, she made a crucial mistake. What mistake? She claimed she'd never heard of Pine Ridge Care Center and had never considered institutionalizing you. But we have her credit card records showing a $3,000 deposit to Pine Ridge, paid just 2 weeks ago. A deposit for what? For holding a bed in their long-term care facility. She was so confident her plan would work that she'd already paid to reserve your room. The evidence was overwhelming. Every lie Diana had told was contradicted by her own documented actions. "There's something else," Janet continued. "Diana has done this before." "What do you mean?" 5 years ago, Diana's own mother was found dead in a nursing home under suspicious circumstances. Diana had gained guardianship over her mother just 6 months earlier, claiming dementia and incompetency. Janet showed me newspaper clippings about my grandmother's death. Your grandmother was in perfect health when Diana had her committed. The nursing home staff noted that she consistently claimed Diana was stealing from her and begged to be released. What happened to her? Official cause of death was heart failure. But the nursing home records show she'd been over-medicated with psychiatric drugs that weren't prescribed by her doctor. Diana had convinced them your grandmother was violent and needed heavy sedation. The pattern was clear. Diana had practiced on her own mother before planning to do the same thing to me. Diana inherited $47,000 from your grandmother's estate, money that should have gone to you and Ashley. I felt a rage building that I'd never experienced before. Diana hadn't just been stealing money from me. She'd killed her own mother and was planning to destroy my life the same way. What can we do? We fight back, Janet said, but not just in court. We expose everything. She explained the plan. Instead of just defending against Diana's accusations, we would go on the offense. Janet had contacted several family members with the real evidence of Diana's crimes. Your cousin Jake, your Aunt Karen, your Uncle Mike. They're all horrified to learn what Diana really is. They're prepared to testify about the lies she told them to get their support. What about the fake criminal history she created for Robert? We tracked down the source. Diana paid a document forger in Las Vegas to create fake court records. The forger has already been arrested on other charges and is cooperating with authorities. Robert had been quiet during Janet's presentation, but now he spoke up. "Chet, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about money or guardianship anymore. Diana is genuinely dangerous. If she regains custody, she will have you institutionalized, and you might never get out. What do you need me to do? I need you to be strong enough to testify at the hearing today. To tell the judge exactly what Diana said when she visited yesterday and exactly what you remember about her phone call to the hospital. Won't she claim I'm mentally impaired?" "Let her try," Janet said with a smile. "We have her own recordings proving that she knows you're completely mentally competent." She's been counting on your competency to make you a credible witness against Robert. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly awake and clear-headed. The doubt Diana had planted during her visit evaporated as I saw the evidence of her systematic manipulation. I want to stop her, I said. Not just for me, but for my grandmother and for anyone else she might try to hurt. Then we're going to court, Robert said, and we're going to end this today. As we prepared to leave for the courthouse, I realized that Diana's biggest mistake had been underestimating me. She'd assumed that a 19-year-old with a head injury would be easy to manipulate and control. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The courthouse was intimidating, but walking in beside Robert and Janet, I felt stronger than I had since the accident. Diana was already there with her lawyer and Ashley, both dressed conservatively and looking like the picture of a concerned family. When Diana saw me, she rushed over with tears in her eyes. "Oh, honey, you shouldn't be out of the hospital yet. This is too much stress for someone with a head injury." "I'm fine, Mom. The doctor said you need to avoid emotional stress while your brain heals." This legal proceeding is exactly what could make your condition worse. Even in the courthouse hallway, Diana was performing for anyone who might be watching. The hearing began with Diana's lawyer presenting their case. He painted Robert as a dangerous criminal who'd taken advantage of my vulnerability to gain control of my medical care and finances. "Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Hayes has been stalking this family for years, waiting for an opportunity to exploit this young man's inheritance. When the accident left Chet unconscious and vulnerable, Mr. Hayes saw his chance." Diana's lawyer presented the forged criminal records allegedly showing Robert's history of elder abuse. He showed bank statements, proving my inheritance was safely preserved. He painted a picture of Diana as a devoted mother whose only crime was trusting the wrong people. Then Diana took the witness stand. "Your Honor, I love my son more than life itself. When I got the call about his accident, I rushed back from my medical treatment immediately. But by the time I arrived, my brother-in-law had already manipulated the hospital staff into believing lies about me." Diana's performance was flawless. She cried at exactly the right moments, her voice trembled with emotion, and she looked directly at me with love and concern. "Chet is vulnerable right now because of his head injury. Head trauma can make people paranoid and suspicious of the people who love them most. My brother-in-law has taken advantage of that vulnerability to turn my son against his own family." "What is your relationship history with the defendant?" the judge asked. "Robert has always been unstable, Your Honor. He's made threatening phone calls, followed us, and made my family afraid. We've tried to help him over the years, but he's become increasingly obsessed with gaining access to Chet's inheritance." When it was Ashley's turn to testify, she supported every detail of Diana's story. She described specific incidents of Robert's alleged threatening behavior, making her testimony sound credible and detailed. "Uncle Robert called our house at 3 in the morning last month, saying he was going to get what belonged to him no matter what it took. He scared my mom so badly that we considered getting a restraining order." The judge looked concerned as Ashley described Robert's supposed pattern of harassment and stalking. But then it was our turn to present evidence. Janet took the stand first and systematically destroyed every lie Diana had told. She presented the video footage of Diana's meeting with the disability lawyer, the audio recordings of Diana and Ashley planning their false testimony, and the credit card receipts proving Diana's real activities during her spa trip. "Your Honor, Diana Rodriguez has not only stolen over $60,000 from her son's inheritance, but she has also been planning to have him permanently institutionalized as part of an elaborate fraud scheme." Janet played the recording of Diana saying if the accident had just killed him, this would be so much easier. The courtroom was silent as Diana's own voice revealed her true feelings about my survival. "Furthermore," Janet continued, "this is not the first time Miss Rodriguez has used fraudulent incompetency claims to gain control over family members' finances. 5 years ago, she used identical tactics against her own mother. The evidence of my grandmother's suspicious death and Diana's previous financial exploitation painted a clear pattern of criminal behavior. When the forged criminal records against Robert were examined by a handwriting expert, they were immediately identified as fraudulent. The judge was not pleased to discover that fabricated court documents had been submitted as evidence. Then Robert took the stand and told his side of the story with quiet dignity. He explained his years of trying to stay connected with me despite Diana's interference, his discovery of the financial theft, and his desperate attempt to protect me when Diana refused life-saving medical care. Your Honor, I had no choice but to step in when Diana literally told hospital staff to let her son die rather than interrupt her vacation. No mother who truly loved her child would ever say such a thing. But the most powerful moment came when I took the witness stand. Your Honor, I want to tell you exactly what happened and exactly what I remember. I described Diana's phone call to the hospital in detail, repeating her exact words about letting me die if I was too much paperwork. I explained how she'd visited me yesterday and tried to convince me that my memories were distorted by head injury. But I know what I heard. And I know what I remember. My mother was hoping I would die, so she wouldn't have to face the consequences of stealing my inheritance. Diana's lawyer tried to claim that my testimony was unreliable due to head trauma, but Janet had prepared for this argument. Your Honor, we have recordings of Miss Rodriguez discussing how to use Mr. Hayes's supposed mental impairment to their advantage. In these recordings, she clearly acknowledges that he is mentally competent, but vulnerable to manipulation. She can't simultaneously claim he's too impaired to give reliable testimony while planning to use his testimony against his uncle. The contradiction in Diana's position was devastating to her case. But the biggest shock came when Ashley suddenly broke down on the witness stand during cross-examination. I can't do this anymore, she sobbed. Everything I said was a lie. Mom made me promise to lie in court, and she threatened to cut me off from my inheritance if I didn't cooperate. Ashley's breakdown was genuine and heartbreaking. Through tears, she admitted that Robert had never threatened or harassed them. She confessed that Diana had coached her on exactly what lies to tell. Mom has been planning to have Chet institutionalized for months. She showed me the brochures from Pine Ridge and explained how she could keep him there forever while spending his money. Ashley's confession corroborated every piece of evidence Janet had presented. She also told me that if I ever tried to warn Chet or contact Uncle Robert, she'd make sure I ended up in an institution too. The judge's expression grew darker as Ashley revealed the extent of Diana's manipulation and threats against her own children. When Diana's corrupt doctor friend was called to testify about the fake psychiatric evaluations he'd signed, he immediately admitted to falsifying documents in exchange for payment from Diana. I never examined Chet Rodriguez. Diana Rodriguez paid me $2,000 to sign pre-written psychological evaluations, claiming he was mentally incompetent. The doctor's confession was the final nail in Diana's coffin. After hearing all the evidence, the judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Miss Rodriguez, the evidence clearly shows that you have not only stolen your son's inheritance, but have also engaged in an elaborate fraud scheme designed to permanently control his life and finances. Your behavior toward your son constitutes criminal abuse and endangerment. The judge granted Robert permanent guardianship and ordered Diana to immediately repay all stolen inheritance money plus damages. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate criminal investigation into your financial activities and your role in your mother's death 5 years ago. Diana was arrested in the courtroom as she tried to leave. Her perfect composure finally cracked as sheriff's deputies put handcuffs on her wrists. "This is all lies," she screamed. "That boy is mentally disabled and doesn't know what he's saying. Robert has brainwashed everyone." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence against her was overwhelming and undeniable. Ashley was placed in counseling, but faced no criminal charges due to her cooperation and the threats Diana had made against her. As we left the courthouse that day, I felt like I could breathe freely for the first time in my life. The family members who had supported Diana based on her lies approached us in the parking lot to apologize and offer their support. "We're so sorry, Chet," my Aunt Karen said with tears in her eyes. "We had no idea what Diana was really doing. We thought we were protecting you." My cousin Jake shook Robert's hand and apologized for believing Diana's lies about him. "We want to make this right," Uncle Mike said. "Diana kept us from having a relationship with you and Robert for years. We'd like to change that if you're willing." For the first time since childhood, I felt like I had a real family again. 3 months later, Diana was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud, theft, and financial elder abuse. The investigation into my grandmother's death led to additional charges. I received not only my stolen inheritance money but also damages and the life insurance payout that Diana had tried to claim for herself. But more importantly, I had gained something I'd never really had before: a family that actually loved and protected me. 1 year later, I stood in Robert's backyard helping him prepare for our annual family barbecue. My leg had healed completely, and the only lasting reminder of the accident was a small scar on my forehead that barely showed. "Hand me that spatula," Robert called from the grill, where he was cooking hamburgers for what had grown into quite a large gathering. The backyard was full of family members who I'd barely known a year ago. My Aunt Karen was setting up tables with my cousin Jake and his girlfriend. Uncle Mike and his wife were helping arrange chairs. Even some of my second cousins had driven in from other states to be here. "I can't believe how much everything has changed," I said to Robert as we worked side by side. "It's amazing what happens when the toxic people are removed from your life," he replied. "This family was always here, waiting to love you. Diana just kept us apart." Ashley had become a regular fixture at these gatherings. The counseling had helped her tremendously, and she'd learned to be honest and direct in a way she'd never been before. "I spent so many years afraid of Mom's threats that I forgot what it felt like to just tell the truth," she'd told me a few months earlier. Ashley was now working part-time while finishing high school and had started contributing to a college fund that Robert helped her set up. She'd also been seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of growing up under Diana's manipulation. "The therapist says that what Mom did to us was a form of psychological abuse called financial grooming," Ashley had explained. "She trained us from childhood to accept that lying and stealing were normal parts of family life." The healing process had been difficult but worthwhile. Ashley and I had developed an honest relationship for the first time in our lives. "Chet, your lady friend is here," Robert called out with a grin. Sarah, the nurse who'd cared for me in the hospital, was walking through the gate carrying a homemade pie. We'd started dating 6 months earlier, and she'd become an important part of my recovery in every way. "How's the college planning going?" she asked, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "Really well. I've been accepted to Colorado State's business management program, and the inheritance money will cover all my expenses." Instead of the $4,500 a month Diana had planned to spend on keeping me institutionalized, I was using that same money to build a real future for myself. Robert's been helping me understand basic financial planning and investing. Turns out, when your guardian actually cares about your well-being, money management becomes a lot easier. I'd also started volunteering at a non-profit organization that helped families identify and prevent elder abuse. My experience with Diana had given me insights that helped other people recognize similar patterns in their own families. "It's amazing how many people don't realize they're being financially abused," I'd told a support group the week before. "The abuser convinces you that their control is protection, and that questioning them means you're ungrateful or incompetent." The volunteer work had become one of the most fulfilling parts of my new life. Helping other families escape situations like mine gave meaning to everything I'd been through. "Has anyone heard from Diana recently?" Ashley asked as we gathered around the picnic table for dinner. "She sent another letter from prison," Robert said, "still claiming she's innocent and that we're all conspiring against her." Diana had been writing letters to various family members, trying to convince them that her conviction was based on falsified evidence. No one was buying her story anymore. "The parole board psychiatrist says she shows no signs of genuine remorse or understanding of what she did wrong," Robert continued. "She'll likely serve her full 3-year sentence." I'd made peace with the fact that Diana would probably never acknowledge the harm she'd caused. The important thing was that she could no longer hurt anyone. "I've been thinking about something," I said as we shared dinner together. "This accident that nearly killed me actually saved my life in a way." "How so?" Sarah asked. "If Diana's original plan had worked, I would have been declared incompetent and institutionalized without ever knowing why. I would have spent my life believing I was mentally disabled, and that my family's control over me was necessary." The thought still chilled me. Without the accident, I might never have discovered Diana's theft or her plans for my future. Instead, the accident exposed everything and brought Robert back into my life. It connected me with all of you. I gestured around the table at faces that had become genuinely precious to me. I learned that real family doesn't control you or manipulate you. Real family protects you and supports your independence, even when it's inconvenient for them. Robert had exemplified that principle every day since becoming my guardian. Instead of controlling my decisions, he'd taught me how to make good decisions for myself. Instead of managing my money for his benefit, he'd taught me how to manage it for my own future. Robert could have taken advantage of the guardianship to benefit himself, I continued. But instead, he spent the entire year preparing me to be completely independent. That's what real love looks like. What are your long-term plans? Uncle Mike asked. I want to study business management and maybe law, then start a nonprofit organization that specializes in preventing financial elder abuse. There are too many families going through what we went through. Sarah smiled and took my hand. We've also been talking about getting engaged after I finish nursing school next year. The announcement brought cheers and congratulations from around the table. Robert looked particularly pleased. Diana spent years trying to convince everyone that Chet needed constant supervision and couldn't make good decisions for himself, Robert said. Look at him now. College plans, career goals, healthy relationship, financial responsibility. Turns out he was always perfectly capable of managing his own life. As the evening wound down and family members began to leave, I found myself alone with Robert, cleaning up the backyard. I never properly thanked you, I said. For what? For saving my life. For believing in me when my own mother didn't. For showing me what a real family looks like. Robert stopped stacking chairs and looked at me seriously. Chet, you don't owe me thanks for treating you with basic human decency. What Diana did was criminal. But beyond that, it was a betrayal of everything parenthood is supposed to represent. What do you mean? A parent's job is to raise a child who can eventually live independently and make good choices. Diana's goal was to keep you dependent and controllable forever. That's not parenting, that's imprisonment. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about Diana being in prison. Don't you dare feel guilty. Diana made her choices, and she's facing the consequences. The only person responsible for Diana's situation is Diana herself. Robert put his hand on my shoulder. You survived something that many people wouldn't have survived. You found the strength to stand up to manipulation and fraud that had been carefully planned for months. You should be proud of yourself. I couldn't have done it without you and Janet and Ashley's confession and all the evidence. But you're the one who had to find the courage to testify and fight back. That strength came from inside you, not from us. As I drove home that night with Sarah, I reflected on how completely my life had changed in just 1 year. The accident had been traumatic and painful, but it had also revealed truths that might have remained hidden forever. Diana's refusal to authorize life-saving surgery had seemed like the ultimate betrayal, but it had actually been the key to my freedom. What are you thinking about? Sarah asked. How sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up leading to the best things. That's a pretty mature perspective for someone who's only 20. I guess surviving a parent's attempt to destroy your life will age you quickly. We both laughed, but there was truth in the joke. The experience had forced me to grow up and take control of my life in ways I might not have otherwise. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Diana? Sarah asked. I don't know. Forgiveness feels less important than just making sure she can't hurt anyone else. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her, but right now I'm focused on building a life she can't touch. The most important lesson I'd learned was that family isn't just about blood relations. Real family consists of people who want to see you succeed and grow, not people who want to control and diminish you. Robert had shown me what unconditional love actually looks like. It doesn't seek to possess or control. It seeks to nurture and protect, while fostering independence and growth. As Sarah and I made plans for our future together, I realized that I was building the kind of family I'd always deserved but never had. A family based on honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. The inheritance money that Diana had tried to steal was now funding my education and my dreams. The family relationships she'd tried to destroy had been restored and strengthened. The independence she'd tried to take away had become the foundation of my adult life. Diana had intended my 19th birthday to be the beginning of the end of my freedom. Instead, it had become the beginning of the first real freedom I'd ever known. Sometimes the people who should protect you become your greatest threat. But real family isn't always blood. It's the people who choose to love and protect you when you need it most. When you find those people, hold on to them, because they're the ones who will help you become who you're truly meant to be. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between loyalty to toxic family members and protecting your own well-being? How did you find the strength to put your safety first? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding your true support system. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than manipulation and control. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you have the power to create the loving, supportive family you deserve, even if it doesn't look like what you originally expected.